75mm focal length is a bit of an oddball really, because it's not long enough to be more than a bit part telly, and it's not short enough to be a standard. If it were a drink, it wouldn't be Coke Light or Coke Fat. It would be Coke Light mixed with a dollop of ice cream. It's a bit of a bad analogy really.
The current 75mm Summicron has aspherical elements made out of exotic glass with APO lens to minimise colour aberrations and spherical aberration, along with a floating element for close-up quality.
They'll come and chase me if I take a picture of them.
As a focal length, it's a relative newborn in the long line of Leica lenses. 75mm was introduced at the start of the 80s, and of course along with the first M camera with 75mm frame lines.
Leica fans burned their faces in disgust. Their once uncluttered viewfinders became more confusing. Not really, I just made that up, just for dramatic effect. Now, some people don't really get the 75mm focal length for the Leica system. It's neither the classic 50 or the 90. But then there are plenty of fans of the 75mm Summilux, which is now sadly discontinued.
And it was a phenomenal lens. But as Kierkegaard says, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And this latest 75 is the fastest in the current Leica M lineup.
The 50mm focal length is quite perfect for street photography. The 75, it forces you to step back a bit with those extra 25mm.
To be honest, it's more a matter of learning where you physically stand when it comes to using a 75mm. However, sometimes it can be a bit tight for street shooting. We're walking down the small, somewhat messy roads, but it didn't take me long before I felt good about using the 75 quad. Even when one is looking through the viewfinder, what you see is not restricted by the focal length. There's space around the 75mm frame line, so you can recompose or move back and forth to get right framing. It's a different kind of street shooting, but no less detached. This focal length, along with the detail and good bokeh, make it a great choice for portraits too.
If there was any light. Oh, here we go. One good thing is that with the 75mm you can stand a little bit further back if you feel that they don't want to have a photographer getting in your face. Although you're not completely separated from your subject like you would be with a long tele lens, you feel more like a perv using a 100+ lens. Now I just feel like a little bit of a perv.
Some people may scoff at the Leica prices, but the feel of this lens is unlike any L or Nikkor. Forgive me if you think I'm being melodramatic, but their lenses are like mini works of art, jewels for men. The glass within that beautiful metal outer is no less precious, and a heck of a lot more useful than a diamond necklace.
The build quality of this lens is really second to none. It's built like a brick outhouse. It weighs 480 grams, which is relatively heavy for a rangefinder lens, and big too. But when you compare it to a DSLR lens, it's nothing, to be honest. It's got a lovely Slidy built-in hood, which I like. It's all metal too. And the aperture clicks in half stops. And the sound and feel of it is music to the ears.
There's no compromise in performance, even at its maximum aperture. And it has to be noted that this 75 more than lives up to the Summicron moniker. It's sharp, beautifully crisp edge to edge. But when you want it, the backgrounds fade away with a nice creamy softness, or whatever dairy metaphor you care to use. This 75mm is probably the sharpest Leica 75 wide open. The Summicron is a fantastic performer and a beautifully crafted chunk of glass and metal. It has better micro contrast than the old Lux, and from what I recall, it is sharp at f2 also. By this point, the natural light had all gone and I decided to call it a day. It has characteristics similar to the superb 50mm Lux aspherical, because its design is derived from it. It's an example of Leica's triumph in modern lens design. It's practically perfect. But the one question that bugged me as I took that train journey home was, what would the 75mm Lux aspherical be like?